I have had so many requests to review the Hellraiser films. Ever since I started my channel, started doing reviews, really. Always my response was, "Oh, I'll do them eventually. Do a review." It's been years now, so I figured I'd at least kind of shit or get off the pot, do a review since it's Halloween time, doing 31 days of horror movie reviews. So what better time to at least get started on that? So I wanted to review Hellraiser for today. This is my DVD here from Anchor Bay, THX certified restoration. Great looking on DVD. I've heard it looks really good on Blu-ray too, but I don't have the Blu-ray, so I'll have to take everyone's word on that. I do though have a VHS. This is a pretty cool. This is a two-tape VHS. This includes Hellraiser and Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. Special edition two-tape set. And it has like interviews with Clive Barker. Pretty cool for a VHS set. But this review will just be for Hellraiser 1 because I wanted to focus on the first film because I do think it does set itself apart from the other movies. It is a unique standalone film on its own, though I mean for sure it complements with Hellraiser 2 specifically very nicely. Like those two kind of connect. But I wanted to focus on Hellraiser 1. Do a review on it as its own film, which it certainly is. So yeah, this will be my review of Clive Barker's Hellraiser, and I'll tell you right now, I would say I was quite a bit late to the Hellraiser party, comparatively. Like let's say with Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Friday the 13th. Child's Play, even Leprechaun, all those movies I saw when I was a kid, pretty young, and I got into those. Hellraiser I didn't see until maybe I was like 19, 20, pretty late in the game, I'd say. So I wouldn't say it's like a childhood nostalgic favorite or anything like that. So I saw it when I was comparatively older. So yeah, so 19, 20 or so. And it's not like I purposely avoided the movie or anything like that. Like I was aware of the Hellraiser series somewhat, had seen some clips. I would always see, in the video store, I'd see like the covers for them, and kind of had an idea in my head of what they may be. I have this insidious looking character here, probably as their, key villain that goes around killing people, a la Freddy, a la Jason. So their signature villain, which I guess they would somewhat cater the series to be somewhat like as it went along. But the first one is definitely beyond those expectations that I had. So I was quite surprised when I did end up first seeing the very first Hellraiser. And I am ultimately glad that I did see it when I was a little bit older. Because it is, I would say, it's a lot more of a mature movie and a lot more challenging of a movie than I would have expected it to be, or that I think it normally gets credit for being. So I mean, there is that. It's definitely a very interesting movie that it just wasn't what I expected it to be, and it certainly has its place among horror classics for sure. It is based on Clive Barker's own work, his novella *The Hellbound Heart*, and he wrote it, directed it, had pretty hands-on on it. So again, I had this expectation of it, of this killer, this demonic-looking fucker here running around killing people. But no, it's not quite like that. He is this character, which is the Doug Bradley plays him. He's the lead Cenobite in the film. This film is about this alternate universe that is accessed with all these Cenobites, who are angels to some, demons to others. Their universe is hell to some, heaven to others. It does mainly more focus on this family, which I would say is as dysfunctional as a family as you can probably get. We have the husband and wife, and newly married somewhat. Larry and Julia. There is Larry's daughter, Kirsty, not Julia's daughter though. She's from another marriage, as well as the black sheep of the family, Frank, who is kind of this vagabond, this miscreant who gets into a lot of trouble traveling the world and getting himself into trouble. We find in this movie that there was an affair that took place between Julia and Frank, and really it kind of all amounts to Julia. She still feels the heat from this affair. She's still kind of obsessed with it. And that's what this movie is about. This movie is about obsession. It is about sin, and it is about, let's face it, sadomasochism. That's what this movie is about. It's a very sexually charged movie, and so what we find out in this movie is that Frank, this explorer that he is, exploring, sexual limits and exploring different universes. He finds this box, this infamous box in the movie. He solves the puzzle of the Hellraiser box that we all know, and it brings him to this other universe. And he's gone missing for this whole time, but what happens is that a drip of Larry's blood, it brings him back to life, and Julia happens upon him, and that's kind of how the plot gets rolling, and it's her trying to resurrect him, basically. And that's what's kind of interesting about the movie. It is about their relationship and her obsession with him, and him kind of taking advantage of her, basically, to get back into the mortal realm. He's pitched in more than he's bargained for with the Cenobites. So he's not too. I would assume he's not too happy in the universe that he's found himself in, with all the torture and whatnot. But it is about pushing the limits of carnal pleasures and things like that. And what it's weird, it does kind of ultimately remind me a little bit about of David Cronenberg's Crash, if you remember that movie, where it's like these characters, they're just so, they reach a point where they're so unfulfilled through their own sexual endeavors that they seek these weird means to get arousal. In their case, it was car crashes. In this case, it's opening up a fucking box and unleashing demons, unleashing hell, unleashing torture and horrible, disgusting stuff like that. So there is that. And, it is interesting because basically, as the plot moves along, what it's all about is Julia finding more victims to bring Frank back into, a mortal existence, basically. Needs their blood, needs to gain sustenance from that. And what's interesting about that is that, it's, again, that's very sexual. She's bringing these men over, for, one night stands, for sex, things like that. So Frank kind of becomes a cuckold in that sense. But, think about that. He just needs their blood. There's no reason why, it would be of that nature if it weren't, the theme of the movie. She could have ordered a pizza and brought the pizza guy in and killed him, or I need my refrigerator repaired. Can you come on over? Whatever. But it is about their sexual relationship and how fucked up it is, really. So there's all that. But what they don't anticipate is Kirsty, Larry's daughter. It should be noted that she isn't living with them in this house. She's she's young. She's maybe early 20s, late teens, trying to live on her own. But she comes to visit. She discovers their whole evil plan, which she can't even comprehend. But then she gets mixed up in the Cenobite world, and that's when some really terrifying things start to happen. So it's all about her striking a bargain with the Cenobites. Hey guys, your eyes must not been on the ball, but that Frank guy, he got away from you. They're like, what? Yeah, Doug Bradley, what? All the pins in his head, what? But it's striking a bargain with them. I can get him to you. I can get him. So that's kind of what the theme of the film is. So it is about betrayal, about sin, sexuality, sadomasochism, all that good stuff. So I think it's a very interesting plot of the movie, and it reaches deeper realms than your average kind of slasher film. I wouldn't call this at all a slasher film. This is grotesque horror as art, I would say. The artistic mind of Clive Barker bringing this, gallows type of surrealism to the screen, using this story to show some very incredible special effects. Like when you look at the gore, this was just top of the line at the time. Because really, in the '80s, not only were they becoming so advanced with special effects, but yeah, I would say the MPAA was probably becoming a little bit more lenient because as films were becoming more intense with the violence, even compared to this is 1987, 20 years ago. From that point, I mean, just getting more and more intense, different precedents. Like, I could imagine, hey, Friday the 13th, we can show someone's throat getting slit. Why can't we do that if in, like, let's say the fucking Godfather, you have someone shot in the eye, you have a horse head in the bed. You're saying we can't slit a throat? Nightmare on Elm Street, geyser of blood gushing out of Johnny Depp's bed. What, we can't show a guy getting ripped apart through chains in Hellraiser? Come on. So there was that too. And there was, of course, the 80s home video becoming more popular, so an X rating, NC-17 rating, wouldn't necessarily kill the movie at that point for distribution, since a lot of these would make their way to home video as opposed to becoming big hits theatrically, which I don't know if Hellraiser... I didn't do any research on the movie, but I don't know if it really was that big of a hit. I don't even... It has a rating here. It says it's rated R, so I guess they made it. But I would imagine it became more popular on home video. I would imagine. Because, I mean, after the third movie, I believe, that's when they started all becoming straight to video, right? So that makes sense. And it's important not to lump these in with, say, like the video nasties. I think there's some, documentary on one of the Evil Dead movies where they had like a film critic. I can't remember who he was, but he was like, yeah, those video nasties, I mean, they tend to be lumped up with stuff like Evil Dead, Hellraiser, but you got to keep in mind, those movies are really for the guy who sits at home watching them sharpening his chainsaw. So it's important not to lump this movie in with those, because I do believe this film is art. I do believe it's art, because it does, reach into deep fears and deep, carnal instincts that all human beings have. And seeing it so... brought to such a heightened kind of exaggeration by showing this alternate Cenobite universe with these really terrifying kind of beings, these Cenobites. You have the lead Cenobite, played by Doug Bradley. He has all the pins in his head, pale. You have the chatterers, and you have like the female Cenobite with like the opening in her trachea. Very, very kind of creepy stuff, and they're all in kind of like the binded leather and stuff like that. So I mean, it's not too subtle in what it's trying to go for, but it's very interesting. So I think this appeals to a very specific type of audience, I guess. But at the same time, because it is such an incredible magic show of these special effects, I think that's why ultimately horror fans are so impressed with this film, and why it has remained one of the staples of horror. I mean, it definitely has some intense stuff in it, but I would say somewhat compared to the torture porn, if you want to call it that, of like today's horror films. It's not too horrible, but I'm sure this isn't like a date movie that you take someone on your first date. So there's that to consider as well. But I think Clive Barker, really has a twisted mind that he was able to bring this twisted story to, and he was able to create really, I would argue that it is, among the best horror movies. While it isn't, say, a personal favorite, just because I don't think I have that nostalgia for it, I still definitely recognize it. This one particularly, though. The second one I like quite a bit, too. I would say Standing Alone, it definitely has its place in absolute, best horror films. So there's that. So yeah, I guess that's really all I have to say about Hellraiser. Hope you enjoyed this review. Hope it was worth waiting 3 or 4 years for. I will try to end up reviewing more in the series periodically. I guess I'll give it a shot. But for now, that's Hellraiser. This has been 31 Days of Horror, my 2014 horror marathon. Still some more reviews to come, so stay tuned for that. Till then, comment, rate, subscribe, all that great stuff. And thanks for watching. See you later.